Here's what I need from you. I need you to have your ear down to the ground and be waiting for the massive announcements that we have this weekend. We already pushed out one update on the site. Now, this is just one of many, many, many tools that we have coming your way. Yes, I spent way too much money on actually being able to get real fantasy football stats added into these guys. So you can go ahead and when you're looking at the rankings on the site, you can check out Lamar Jackson every single season, right? And we actually can see that we have advanced analytics on the site, not just standard, oh, okay, this player went through and he had, say, 62 receiving yards in week 1, right? You're going to be able to see their yards per route run. You're going to be able to see their yards per target. You're going to be able to see their target share. You're going to be able to see how many routes they're actually running. You're going to be able to see their snap rates. So if you go over and maybe let's look at a little bit of a lesser player. I don't want to click on Saquon Barkley, but maybe you want to click on Bucky Irving and see how he progressed throughout the course of the season. You can actually see, oh, okay, yeah, great juke rate some of these weeks early in the season, maybe indicating when he sees a little more volume later in the year, like these snap rates that you have the final 3 weeks, this is going to be a player that actually is able to dominate. So a ton of new stuff coming into the site. Could not be more excited to keep updating and pushing out for y'all. And of course, what we're going to do right now is we're going to be looking at teams on the site, and we're going to be trying our absolute best to make some trades and get them ready for their rookie drafts. So first team we're going to be looking at is coming out from Fatty. My guy, let me hook you up with a free trade question and a free start sit question, just in case you have anything to follow up on with this team, whether that's this offseason, during the season, whenever you want. But hey, Mason, took over this team from someone else. Looks okay, but I don't know. I really want to contend this year. Please let me know what trades need to be done and what players I should pursue in the rookie draft. We'll really appreciate you. Looking at this squad, looks like you actually changed the team name. I know that we ended up taking over this from someone else. So I'm actually going to have to reach out to you to make sure that we are on the same page with what team. I definitely don't want to be looking at the wrong roster there. So we're actually going to move over to Mr. McGiblets at the moment. So say, Mason, just took over this orphan team and could use some help. It definitely doesn't look like a contending team to me. So I was thinking about trading Walker before the draft. I like the quarterback value on the team. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because you also just took over this team as the orphan, so we don't have the updated name. If we're looking at the updated names, please make sure if you're taking over an orphan to shoot me a message on the site reminding me what your team actually is. Here, this one's from Juicy Napkins, who recently traded Dak and Chase Brown for Bowers in the 205. I'm competitive, but looking to set up for the future to make a couple-year run. I'm actually very surprised that you're able to make this trade here, especially in a 10-teamer, where it probably makes a little more sense for you to go out there and for you to pay up for that elite level asset, such as Brock Bowers. Absolutely love this. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals, and they actually have been bringing in running backs like Caleb Johnson and testing them out privately. Of course, that doesn't guarantee that they're going to be taking a running back in the draft, but look at the team investment they have into Chase Brown, and it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if he gets Marlon Mack, right? So absolutely love this move to get Bowers, and in a 10-teamer, that 205 is also actually pick 13. So super exciting here. Now, if you're looking at the league with the league analyzer, this is a situation in which there are 2 juggernaut rosters where you can see we have about 4 times the amount of value as the very bottom team here. So super comfortable spot to be in. Really, this is going to be the only other squad that we have to contend with. So it makes a ton of sense for us to go out of our way and quote unquote overpay for those lead assets, such as Brock Bowers here. But pulling this up, oh my gosh, this makes it even better, right? Because we didn't even need Dak Prescott. We have one of the best quarterback rooms in the league. We're sitting with Daniels, Kyler, Bryce Young, as well as Justin Fields. So we have a situation in which you could maybe make an argument, oh, okay, we can still afford to trade away another quarterback. Let's go see what we can get for Bryce Young. Let's go see what we can get for Justin Fields. And for me personally, I would say that if I'm looking to sell a player here, it is actually going to be Bryce Young, because in comparison, I would say, and you can see this with my rankings, I have Bryce Young ranked at 68. I have Justin Fields ranked at 89. I have Young ranked significantly ahead of Fields. But if we're looking at the range of outcomes of these two guys, specifically for fantasy football purposes, here in a 10-team Superflex league where we have a juggernaut roster, I don't necessarily know if Bryce Young's going to be making that big of a difference for you, even if he turns out to be an above average NFL quarterback, because you're not really going to have the rushing upside and he's in a bad situation, right? So I don't necessarily know if he's ever hitting your starting lineup anyway. You're never going to play this dude over Daniels, never going to play him over Kyler. Where Fields does somehow turn into an above average NFL quarterback, he's going to be great in fantasy based off the rushing upside. Obviously, you can get a lot more for selling Bryce Young than you can for Justin Fields. And specifically when you have the juggernaut build, I'm a little bit more focused in on trying to build around the guys that have upside and swinging for the fences. So if we can go ahead, if we can try to package together maybe Bryce Young and one of these other assets, particularly running back, to see if we can tier up and get a better RB, that'd be great. Now, again, this is going to be a 10-teamer. So with the 10-team format in mind, there aren't going to be too many other rosters that could use that third quarterback. The other juggernaut team here actually could be a candidate. However, they have Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, no third quarterback. So if you wanted to see if we could send them Bryce Young and like Jonathan Taylor to see if we can get up to one of the top end running backs that they have, such as Jahmyr Gibbs. Let me pull up the trade calculator on the site just to make sure that we're not completely off here, right? They get Bryce Young as well as Jonathan Taylor. Let's see how far off we are with Gibbs. Okay, yeah, we're not going to get this done. We would have to add in another piece. Let's see what we could potentially add in. Really adding a wide receiver for them is not going to do much. It's a 10-team start 10 league. They already have Puka, Lamb, St. Brown, Wilson, Addison, Pearsall. So, I mean, us going through and adding in Michael Pittman isn't moving the needle whatsoever, right? Now, we do have the 201, 202, so this is really going to be like pick 11, right? So, if we go in here and say they get pick 11 as well, does this balance things out a little bit more? I mean, if you could make a move like this, I would 100% look to do so because, again, we don't necessarily need Young. It would move Fields to be our quarterback 3. And then in that world, you're sitting with Daniels, Kyler, Fields at quarterback. Running back, we have Gibbs, Kyron, Aaron Jones, an elite wide receiver room, the best tight end in Dynasty. So I think you'd be in a phenomenal situation on that front. Going ahead and looking at what we have at running back, I mean, we can contend with this running back room, right? Maybe Kyron has a little bit of risk with the NFL draft, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And we have plenty of draft capital here where if the Rams do surprise us, they take Judkins, they take Caleb Johnson, whoever it may be. At that point, are we able to just go ahead and send the 201, send the 202 for a different veteran running back like Joe Mixon? So you have that insulation where even if worst case scenario happens in the NFL draft and Kyron does get nuked, we can still turn around and trade for a veteran running back and still contend regardless. Now, again, if you wanted to go back to that instance of this trade over here, I would personally rather sell Kyron than I would Jonathan Taylor if possible. But again, the issue is if you're selling Kyron instead of JT, I'm going to assume that you probably have to add in a couple other assets, right? At that point, we're probably having to try to go through and add in a third, add in a fourth, which specifically for your setup where we have that juggernaut roster, I probably rather would, but very rarely are you going to be able to go through and sell 5 assets and in return get back 1, especially if you're trading with another strong owner. But regardless, I think running back room, you are set up to contend. Are these guys going to increase in value going into next offseason? Definitely not, but we're a contending roster, so that's not necessarily our number one goal here. Going over to receiver, we have Neighbors, London, JSN, Harrison, Rome. There's nothing to discuss. Every single one of these wide receivers is a cornerstone piece in that they should be able to help us contend in the short term, while at the same time, they have the ability to increase in dynasty value going into next offseason. This is the perfect wide receiver room to build around. Again, nothing to discuss. I think you're in a great spot. We traded for the elite tight end. I absolutely love it. Now, when we're looking at the 201, 202, 205, here's why I want to go back to that trade that we potentially laid out where we package together like Bryce Young, pick 11, Jonathan Taylor to go try to sell and get that top end RB, right? Because you may be in a world where these early seconds end up being Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, based off the NFL draft capital that those quarterbacks may see, or if Dart ends up going to the Saints around pick 10, or if Shedeur Sanders ends up going around there, maybe they are the 12th best rookie, or maybe instead the best rookie in that range is actually going to be a tight end. Neither of those picks would really help this roster in any kind of way. Really, the only thing that I think you could see here is trying to get a running back added onto this team. But the top 5 RBs, just going back to what we have on the rankings page here, Rookies. The top 5 RBs should be off the board by the time we're at pick 11. Maybe Caleb Johnson isn't. It's going to be a 10-team Superflex league, so maybe the quarterbacks are pushed down just a bit. But anyway, pick 11, I think you're going to be looking at like Matthew Golden. I think you're going to be looking at Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland. Again, maybe a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. Where if we could move up and if we could be in the range of like possibly being able to get to Henderson, get to Judkins, I think we could see those rookies moving the needle for this roster. I just don't necessarily know if taking Tyler Warren does much here when we have Bowers and Pitts. So I'd be very quick to add pick 11, add pick 12 to a running back, trying to move up and upgrade the position. Again, especially if we can add Bryce Young and get that deal done. But overall, it's a great team. And I think that's really all we have to say. Again, you're in a spot where you have the second best team in this league and the top 2 teams are leading by a wide margin. But I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out. And let me pop open the chat real quick just so I can bring up y'all's messages on the stream. I see that we had Avery out in the chat previously. Says on a plane. We are... do I need to text Avery? I'm not supposed to be flying to New York until tomorrow, correct? Oh, for the love of God. If I'm supposed to be going to New York today, we got... Ladies and gentlemen, this may be a disaster. We'll figure it out after the live stream. Let's go ahead and let's move on. If Avery is here and could clarify for me, that would be beneficial. I thought my flight was tomorrow. Hopefully it is. But anyway, Mitch coming through says, yo, Mason, I finished 3rd last season, so I took advantage of my situation and made some recent trades. Sent the 110 for DJ Moore, sent Najee for Stafford and Westbrook, gave up Amon-Ra St. Brown and Daniel Jones for Caleb Williams in the 112, sent my 203 for Mike Evans, sent Stafford and T for 2 thirds and Mayfield. Okay. So let's get a sense of all this, right? I will say we are near the bottom of the league analyzer, so my initial reaction is this is probably going to be a rebuilding team. 110 for DJ Moore. I mean, we can just go ahead and go trade by trade here, put it in the calculator because it's a lot easier to visualize when we actually can see the assets side by side like this, right? Rather than just trying to read them out. So 110 versus DJ Moore. I would say that you're winning this deal easily. I mean, looking at the expert average rank, you're at 59 versus 74. Sit Najee for Stafford and Westbrook. This should be a spot where we would rather have. Is this Nick Westbrook? Nick Westbrook-Akeen is effectively a 0. Is this Dede Westbrook? Can somebody let me know? Is there a Westbrook I'm missing? Gave up Amon-Ra St. Brown, Daniel Jones for Caleb Williams in the 112. Okay, this one I don't know about here, my friend. So we sent Amon-Ra St. Brown, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is pretty damn close to just an absolute 0 at this point, right? For the 112 and Caleb, saying it's a fair deal. But again, I think you're giving up the best asset. But again, if you are willing to pivot over to a rebuild, I can understand why you think that Caleb can continue to increase in value. And it would be the most surprising thing in the world if Caleb is more valuable than Amon-Ra St. Brown in Superflex Leagues next offseason. So the 203 for Mike Evans, that's just like the confusing part of this, right? Because we're making these deals that kind of look like we are setting up to rebuild and then at the same time trading for contending assets and sending Stafford and T for Baker. So here's what I'm going to do. We sent Najee for Stafford. So let's just essentially combine these deals. So we sent DJ Moore. We sent Najee. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, 203. Higgins. Okay. So this is everything we sent based off how I am reading this, correct? No, we sent the 110 for DJ Moore. I apologize. DJ Moore is going to be on the other side of that. Okay. So here's what we sent. St. Brown, Higgins, late first, early second, Najee, and Daniel Jones. Now we got back DJ Moore. Westbrook, again, unless somebody can let me know in the live chat, is this Nick Westbrook? Is this D.D. Westbrook? Is this Russell Westbrook? Maybe I'm missing something. But Stafford, which we flipped immediately, so not including him. We got Baker, Evans, Caleb, Baker, Evans. I believe we got back the 112 and 2/3. So this is a lot here, but looking at it this way, 110 versus the 112 and a couple thirds, we can maybe remove. Dylan says probably assuming meant Nick Westbrook. But again, Nick Westbrook in my mind makes zero difference whatsoever. A trade calculator is saying that this is a fair deal. I think if we want to narrow it down and view it in a little bit of an easier light, I could remove the 110, 112 in the thirds. And viewing it as Amon-Ra St. Brown to Caleb downgrade, Higgins to DJ Moore downgrade, Najee to Evans upgrade, and we're effectively picking up Baker Mayfield. I think for this trade, if you're competing, you probably want the left side, but ultimately it comes down to how you're going to be valuing both Baker Mayfield's and Caleb Williams. If you think Baker and Caleb are going to crush, then I think it's fine, but that's what this trade hinges on. It has to. Going through and looking at what we have with the rest of the roster. We're sitting with Caleb, Kyler, Baker at this point. So great quarterback room. And this is maybe, after seeing this, why I'm not going to be the biggest fan of this trade. I feel like you really paid up to get Baker Mayfield here, where Baker's arguably your quarterback 3 in this league. So I don't necessarily know if it really accomplished much, because we go over and we look at running back. We have Breece, Kamara, both contending assets and great running backs if we're trying to win in the short term, right? But also both running backs that could be worth less in Dynasty 12 months from now than they are today. We have DJ Moore, Evans, Jalen McMillan's our wide receiver 3. We can't contend with this wide receiver room. We have TJ Hawkinson at tight end. So like we go through and we compare our team to maybe some other rosters in this league, like Lamar, Love, Achane, Kyron, Connor, Brian Thomas, Ladd, Waddle, DK Metcalf, Pickens, Trey McBride. We're going to have a tough time competing with these rosters, right? I would almost say that this is a team that you're stuck in the middle between. I don't know if we have the juice to contend, but if we want to pivot to a rebuild, you have to sell Breece, you have to sell Kamara, you have to sell Evans. I think you're good enough as is that I probably don't want to have to pivot over to a rebuild at this point, because if you pivot to a rebuild, like I said, your top 4 guys, non-quarterback wise, you're selling, which is a hard pivot to make. So I would rather go into this season with the hopes of taking somebody at the 112 that you think can hold long-term value as well as help us win in the short term. So maybe if Caleb Johnson finds himself a bad landing spot, maybe if Cam Scatterbo finds himself a great landing spot, taking somebody of that ilk that you're not going to have to trade if we decide to pivot over to a rebuild, but also could actually help you this season. go into the year and see if we get enough juice from these guys at the very top to actually contend. Where if you're sitting at 1-4, 1-3 to open up the season, then at that point, you will have to pivot to a hard rebuild. You will have to sell Brees. You'll have to sell Kamara. You'll have to sell DJ Moore. You'll have to sell Evans. And just build around Caleb, Baker, Kyler, and Hawkinson and the whatever first-round picks that we can get and whatever rookie we took at the 112. What I would strongly advise not doing with this team, which I think could maybe end in disaster, is do not sell your 2026 picks. Those 2026 picks, we need to hold on to this roster just in case we need the flexibility to pivot to that rebuild during the season, which I think your team's too strong to do right this second. Overall, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of those trades for the reason we discussed, because I do think that we're kind of stuck in the middle here, and I'm just going to try to stay flexible with these rookie picks. And again, make sure that we're just tracking what this team actually does to start the year. Because if you're in a situation in which we start off 4-1 and maybe we just need an extra running back piece, then maybe at that point we can actually trade our 2026 first and go get another running back. But I would be very, very hesitant to do so until we're actually into the season. We know our record and we know which our trajectory actually is. Because right now you're in the middle. But I know that maybe didn't help a ton. I really do appreciate you though. And I really hope I was able to help you out in some way. Let me move this over to our next question. This is going to be from Gutsy. It says, obviously we need a running back. Trying to grab a third/second quarterback with Fields there. Not sure if I have to go running back heavy in the draft to try to move the 106 for a quarterback. League mates have been making shopping difficult though. So I will say, this is a 12-team Superflex start 8 format. So 2 out of 8 of your starting lineup spots are quarterback. That's 25%. We should expect about 40% of your output weekly to come from quarterback here. Quarterback in this format should be at a massive, massive premium because you're not going to be starting many running backs and wide receivers in comparison. So when we pull up this team, I can tell you right this second that we have too much wide receiver depth and not enough help at QB. As if it's truly a start 8 format, let's just map this out. We have 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, a super flex, a tight end. We have 2 receivers and 1 flex. You can really only start up to like 3 wide receivers in this format. So I would look at a wide receiver like Zay Flowers, where if you're playing in a start 10, if you're playing in a start 11 format, where Flowers maybe has a high floor but a low ceiling, that's a great guy to build around. But here, he may not even have the upside to move the needle for you. Like, are you ever getting this dude actually into your starting lineup? So I would 100% be in line of, oh, okay, let's take that Zay Flowers. Let's see if we can go ahead and sell him with Brock Purdy and a 2-for-1 deal to go get the best quarterback that we can. Now, again, we have the 101. We have the 103. We have no running backs on this roster. So I think default plan is we take Ashton Genty, right? That will take this team from having the worst running back room in the league to having a very respectable running back room immediately, even if you only have 1 guy. 103, 106. This is where things get a little bit difficult. And this is why I think you need to trade Zay Flowers. I think you need to sell some of these wide receiver depth pieces, even if that's Flowers and Worthy, even if that's Rome and Worthy, whoever it may be. I think you need to sell 2 out of 3 of these guys. Because there is a world in which Hampton goes at the 102. Travis Hunter may look like he plays wide receiver. Or Tet McMillan ends up getting a good landing spot into the very clear 103. And then you have to spend this 103 pick on a wide receiver. And then if you're sitting here going, okay, well, I can only start 3 receivers and I have 6 startable guys right now. Do I reach on Cam Ward with this 103 instead of Tet McMillan or Travis Hunter? I think you could box yourself in a very awkward and very bad situation. So to give yourself the flexibility of this pick, I personally would be looking to make those moves right now, selling 2 to 3 of these wide receivers to either upgrade tight end, quarterback, or running back. I think the wide receiver depth here in a start 8 Superflex league is not really going to move the needle too much. Now, you have a great team. Of course, we're sitting here with the number 1 team in the league analyzer. Don't get me wrong. Like, we have a ton of value to be had. But we can go ahead. We can try to look at some of these rosters that maybe have that additional quarterback that we can maybe make that 2-for-1 tier up with. This team is Daniels, Burrow, and Geno. While at the same time, they really don't have much when it comes to running back or wide receiver. So, I mean, if there's a world in which we can try to get up to Burrow by maybe packaging together some of our wide receivers and Caleb, I think that'd be very interesting. Like, let's just start off with right now. Is there any world in which we can trade Caleb and say Worthy and get over to Burrow? How far off are we on this? Okay. Yeah, that's not going to get it done. What else should we be looking to add here? What about Rome? I think Rome's going to be holding more value than Worthy, of course. Here, that's still not getting the job done. If we can convince this team that they need to look to pivot to a rebuild, maybe the trade that we can try to sell them on is giving them Caleb, Rome, and that 201. Bring in Burrow. Then at that point, or because an issue is as well with this roster, they shouldn't be able to contend this next season. The running back one's Najee Harris. If they wanted to pivot to a rebuild, that would give them Daniels, Caleb, Rome, and an extra rookie pick to build around. I actually think that there is a chance that you could get that deal done. Is there any other roster that looks like they may need to pivot over to a rebuild that we can get an upgraded quarterback from? Not particularly. So another option that you're going to have is with that 106, pulling the trigger on Cam Ward if he actually makes it to you there. A 201, 204, we could be looking at Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, depending on the NFL draft capital that either quarterback gets, because we're going to need a third quarterback almost regardless. But again, I think a lot hinges on what we are doing by selling Worthy, Rome, Flowers here. Another possibility that we could maybe have is throwing on Flowers if this team decides that they want to pivot to a rebuild and getting the down tier to Godwin. Because I think you can contend at this point, right? I think the points per game that you're going to get this next year, Godwin and Flowers, is going to be very close. Again, I think you're probably going to be looking for upside since it's going to be a start 8 format. So looking at this, I don't know if there's anything else really to discuss. I mean, we can go ahead and we can try to target some of those rebuilding teams that maybe have a running back or two. What you can maybe do as well with this team, if they are wanting to pivot over into that hard rebuild, is try to add on a few of their running back depth pieces, give them that early second, give them that 201. And then do we have another asset to play around with? Give them that mid second as well. Because if we are just trying to make something a win-win deal here, because this would then in turn have us going into the season, say with Burrow, Purdy as our quarterbacks, Ashton Jeanty, then Najee Charbonnet, a respectable running back room. Wide receiver, we'd have Neighbors, JSN, Worthy, Tyreek, Godwin in a start 8 league where we can only start 3 wide receivers at the very most. We would still have the 101, 103, 106. And then we have the additional first round picks just in case something happens and maybe we get an injury to Burrow and we need to go address the quarterback position during the season. So I know that's a lot there, but it all hinges on selling some of this wide receiver depth based off your league settings. And yes, I think you should prioritize quarterback based off these league settings as well. Even if your league mates are being a little bit difficult, I think worst case scenario, you target some of these rookie quarterbacks in the draft and say Shedeur Sanders and Jackson Dart both get drafted inside the top 15 picks of the NFL draft. I wouldn't be opposed to taking both of them in the second round if you can't get your league mates to trade you a quarterback. But really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way here, my guy. But let's see. Ryan says, Mr. McGiblet's team has been updated. I already traded Hurts likely in a third for Lawrence, Higgins, and Komet. Okay, so let's go ahead. Can you just let me know what the team name is here, my friend? Maybe we can just search Higgins because every time we load up your team, okay, perfect. Mr. McGiblet's. I see that it's updated on Sleeper. Appreciate you. And let's go ahead and let's check this out. So starting off, this is a spot where I know it was an orphan team. You talked about that previously. Thinking about trading Walker before the draft, I would say if we decide that we need to pivot over to a rebuild, yes, I think selling Walker does make sense. But anyway, looking at us with the league analyzer, we are kind of in the middle here. There's one juggernaut team in this league where they have Caleb McCarthy, Brian Thomas, Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, the 106, 109, 110, 111, 112, a bunch of wide receiver production. So, I mean, this is going to be a very strong team that you have to contend with for years to come. But it's not like we're in a spot where we just are decimated with value like this team at the very bottom, where you have no other option but really to be looking for a long, long overhaul. But anyway, let's pull this up. It's going to be a start 10 PPR Superflex half-point tight end premium format. It's a very standard Dynasty league at this point, right? Quarterback, we are sitting with Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence. So we don't necessarily have to be doing much when it comes to any of these quarterbacks. None of them should see a dramatic fall off in terms of their value over the next 12 months. Like if you decided to pivot over to a rebuild, it's not like I'm screaming from the rooftop, oh my gosh, you have to sell Jared Goff. His value is going nowhere but down. Or you can say the same thing about Lawrence, you say the same thing about Baker, same thing about Bo Nix. I mean, all these guys are kind of in a range, particularly at the quarterback position with how these guys age in Dynasty, where you could see their value kind of going anywhere from this point. So you do have all the flexibility in the world. Now, with that being said, we have 4 starting quarterbacks here. If you decided to pivot over to a rebuild, I probably would be looking at one of these guys, whether that's Baker Mayfield or Jared Goff, and seeing what kind of value we could get from them, particularly with a contending team. Now, going over and looking at what we have at running back, we have Walker, Ford, absolutely nobody else. We have the 102 here. So unless you end up getting an absolute horrible landing spot for Hampton, or maybe he falls to round 2 of the NFL draft, or maybe Travis Hunter indeed ends up playing wide receiver, more likely than not, that 102 is going to end up being Hampton. And if you went into the season with Walker, Ford, Hampton as your running backs, that's actually a running back room that you could probably contend with realistically. Wide receiver, we're sitting with London, Higgins, Waddle, and then absolutely nobody beyond this, right? Tank Dell's not going to play this next year, and none of these players will make a difference whatsoever. So looking at the team, especially tight end where we're kind of average, it's a roster that I would say probably doesn't have the firepower to actually contend this next year unless we were to make a move. But you do have the possibility where if you were to go through and if you were to sell one of these quarterbacks, whether that's Baker or Goff, whether to just pick up an additional starter. I mean, it doesn't even have to be running back. Running back would be preferable, of course. But even if it's wide receiver, you can look at that. Because if we fill out this starting lineup right now, we have 2 quarterbacks. We have the tight ends, so we need 7 spots open. We need 7 spots coming from running back and wide receiver. We have Walker, and say we take Hampton at the 102, then London, Higgins, Waddle. So while, yes, running back technically may be a need because we may only have 2 running backs compared to 3 wide receivers, you still need to fill out 2 starting lineup spots week 1 regardless, whether that's wide receiver or running back when it comes to the flex. So, I mean, I see people in the chat saying that we can trade T-Law or Goff for a good quarterback. But the issue, I mean, of a good wide receiver, the issue, right, is if you sell Goff for a wide receiver here, sell Goff for a running back here, you may still not be contending. You may still not have the value to get it done with this orphan team. Now, we can go ahead and we can maybe look at a couple of these teams that need a quarterback and see what we could pluck off their roster from them. So if you decided to pivot to a contending build, which I wouldn't advise because I don't think our team's strong enough where we know for 100% fact, oh, okay, yes, we are going to be a strong contender this next season. I think that it's very much in the range of outcomes where we have to pivot to a rebuild. You could approach this roster at the very bottom in terms of the value on their team and say, hey, man, I'll give you Jared Goff. Send me a couple of these veterans. Let's say we give them Goff, and in return, we ask back for Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, right? I mean, this is a trade that we can't ask if this team thinks that they're going to pivot over to a rebuild and this team absolutely has no quarterbacks. But realistically, we add CMC and Kamara to our roster. While, yeah, we probably are a contender week 1, if anything goes wrong during the season, it could end very, very poorly with the value that we have next season. So I think you're kind of, I want to say, stuck in the middle here. You have a bunch of different options. I would say if you're going to go down the contending path and trade for assets like CMC or Kamara, it kind of needs to be an absolute no-brainer where you are just getting so much value that you can't turn it down. I would prefer to be trading for a couple assets from quarterback needy teams that you can decide to contend with in the short term, or if you pivoted over to a rebuild, you would not need to sell them. Because if we had to pivot to a rebuild during the season and you went and sold one of your quarterbacks for those contending type running backs like CMC or Kamara, you would need to immediately sell those RBs if we pivoted to a rebuild during the year. So looking at this team here, where they have Sam Howell as their third quarterback, this is a roster in which maybe we can try to squeeze out a wide receiver that could be a contending piece, could be a rebuilding piece, depending on what you have with the knee injury as well as the potential suspension this next year. And if you wanted to instead see if we can send, say, Goff and get back Rashee Rice, I think that could be a spot where, we pick up an additional starter that if we pivoted to a rebuild, we're not needing to sell. And this team has Sam Howell as their third quarterback, right? I'm going over this roster as Matthew Stafford is their third quarterback. I mean, the issue is a JSN, yes, is that cornerstone piece. But again, are we actually able to go through and get to JSN? Probably not. I mean, if you wanted to go and shop Bo Nix, but again, I don't necessarily know if we want to do that. That team is 3 quarterbacks, so they're probably not a viable partner. This team here, very interesting. I would assume that they probably don't have enough juice to contend this next season. I mean, Xavier Leggett's their wide receiver 3. But at the same time, like in terms of assets that we could get from them, maybe you're looking at Olave and an additional piece since they need a third quarterback. But I don't necessarily know if they're going to want to send you like Olave and a mid-second for Jared Goff if you deem that they're possibly a team that needs to rebuild. This team sitting here, again, they probably can't contend. They have Najee, Pacheco, Warren as their top running backs. But they need a third quarterback, though. This team needs a third quarterback. They don't have any depth at wide receiver, though. Where's all the depth in this league? Who has it on their roster? This team needs a third quarterback. Perfect. This is our perfect trade partner. I know we already discussed this team at the very top does have just an absolute ridiculous amount of value, both when it comes to their rookie picks as well as their depth at wide receiver. And they need that additional quarterback. Right now, their quarterbacks are Caleb and McCarthy. So I think one thing that we could look to do is sell Goff straight up for a couple late picks, right? If we can sell Goff straight up for the 111 and the 112, just 2 late first, that puts you in a spot in which maybe with those late picks, we go ahead and we take a tight end like Tyler Warren, like Loveland, and then we still take Shedeur Sanders. And it puts us in a situation where we can still contend this next year. Our points per game is not going to be that much worse, but if we need to pivot over to a rebuild, we actually have a little more juice and a little more flexibility to do so. So I think selling Goff to this roster for their like 111, 112 would be advantageous. What I would initially send is I would try to send Goff for the 109 and the 110. But realistically, there's just no way this deal is going to get accepted, right? So I think you're going to have to come back to them with the 111 and the 112. But just to grease the wheels there a little bit. Another possibility, of course, is maybe targeting a little bit of these higher rookie picks like that 106. So we can try to get to the Travion Henderson range. Try to get to the Judkins range, depending on draft capital, depending on landing spots. What that is going to take from us is that would take us probably sending Baker rather than Goff. Right, where Baker is going to hold significantly more value, at least to some people. For me, I have them QB 15, QB 16, so not a big difference. But just whatever you are trading one of these quarterbacks for, I would make sure that you are getting an asset that you'd feel comfortable building around for the long term and not just a piece that you have to contend with right now. But I know that you were in the chat, so please let me know if you have any additional questions about this. I'd be super happy to check this out for you. And Bryant, yeah, your team will be the next team that we look at in this live stream. Don't worry. But let me just make sure real quick that we are not having anything else from Brian. Bill says, yeah, running back too volatile. I'd get a young wide receiver. Yeah, I think the young wide receiver, like the Flowers prototype, just gives you the flexibility on a team like this where you don't necessarily know if you can contend. That if you have to pivot to a rebuild, it's not going to be the end of the world. Where if you go out there and you trade that quarterback for like the CMC Kamara prototypes and we have to pivot to a rebuild, we're screwed. Okay. Peter says, would you down tier from Kyron to CMC for a team to compete next year? 100%. Again, if you were going to do that, I'd probably do it before the NFL draft because I do think that you probably have more risk with Kyron than you do with CMC. But I don't see any additional questions from Ryan. We can always go back if he does have something. But let's move this over to Keebler's Collective. Appreciate you, my guy. Let me go ahead and hook you up with a couple free trade questions just in case you have anything else that you want to follow up with this. 2023 champ. I know I have a good team, just thinking about moving running backs to keep the train rolling. But also wide receivers are young and studs, so riding my geriatric running backs seem okay. What are your thoughts? Also, extra advice, much appreciated. Thank you. No, thank you, my guy. Super excited to check this out. Congrats on winning 2023, and congrats at the same time of still having the most value in this league. And this is going to be a league in which I would make an argument that quarterbacks are extremely valuable, not only because it's super flex, but also you only start 9 players total. So it's not like you're in a spot where you just need to get a ton of wide receivers and a ton of running backs in. You actually do have a high percentage of your starting lineup output coming weekly of the quarterback position. Looking at what we have here, we are sitting with Mahomes and Herbert at quarterback. So 2 quarterbacks that this past season, their coaching staff, their game plan made it where, yes, they did not have anything when it came to fantasy production. They were possibly the most disappointing quarterbacks in fantasy this past year. And Brian says, I won it last year, not 2023. For you to win it last year and not 2023 with Mahomes and Herbert at quarterbacks, very impressive. We traded Bucky, Diggs, and Wandale for CMC and a future first. Absolutely love that deal. Love that deal. But yeah, with Mahomes and Herbert, I am sticking by that. I think that they are 2 great quarterbacks to build around in Dynasty because realistically, if you're looking at their value floor with where it can go from here, I don't necessarily know how Mahomes is worth less than like a second rounder, almost no matter what happens. Like even if Mahomes comes through and he's a mid quarterback 2 again in fantasy points per game, worst case scenario, he's still going to be going in the second round of startups this next season just because who he is, right? Like we can go through and again, we can look at exactly how poor Mahomes was, where you had only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finishes above quarterback 12 weekly this past season. But I mean, we can go back and we look at previous to this. In 2023, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 finishes above quarterback 12. In 2022, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we have seen those top end finishes from Mahomes before in his NFL career. And I think that's still 100% in the range of outcomes. So even though both quarterbacks were very disappointing this past season, I still think you're in a great spot to build around them for the long term. And I think that they could be much better in the short term than they were this past year, just with a little bit of a change in scheme from their offenses. Going over to what we have at running back, we are sitting, yes, with some geriatric running backs. We have CMC, we have Derrick Henry, we have Connor, we have James Cook. Every single one of these running backs, I'd make an argument, will probably be worth less next offseason than they are today. But again, it frankly may not matter because if we can win this league again this next year, I 100% want to be riding off with these running backs into the sunset. I don't particularly care if next offseason our running back room, instead of being ranked 4th when it comes to the value, is ranked 8th or 9th or 10th, whatever it may be. If we can reasonably win this league again this next season, it'd be worth it. And one thing that I want to do, and this is always just like a little unbiased way to see if you actually can contend, right, is for us to just go and look at where these guys are getting drafted in redraft leagues. So obviously we don't have any redraft ADP at the moment, but we do have underdog drafts that have been kicking off, and I'm just trying to pull up real quick to see exactly where these running backs are getting drafted to get a sense of, can we actually contend with this running back list? So CMC is RB5, Derrick Henry's RB6, James Cook's RB14, James Conner's RB22. So on this roster for redraft expectations at the moment, you have 2 borderline top 5 running backs and 2 additional running back 2s. So we have 4 top 24 RBs. And Jaylen Warren is getting some respect as well with no Najee, where Warren is also getting drafted as an RB3. So we have plenty of running back depth and top end production, but of course we should be expecting that the value of these guys go down next offseason. Wide receiver, we have the cornerstone pieces where we have Jefferson, we have Puka. These are guys that we can build around both in the short and long term. You'd say the same thing about Higgins. Higgins I actually drafted a bunch of last year. I will say that maybe we should expect some regression. Again, if we look at what Higgins was able to accomplish this past season, it was phenomenal. But if we go through his entire NFL career, you have seen not nearly this type of top end production. I think a big reason why everybody's willing to give that credit to Higgins is he had the 40 bomb in week 17, right? In the fantasy playoffs, he had 20, 20, and 40 points. But realistically, if we go through and if we look at previous years, in 2023 with T. Higgins, we had 3 games over 20 points. In 2022, we had 4 games over 20 points. In 2021, we had 3 games with over 20 points. In 2020, we had 1 game with over 20 points. So I do think that we may end up seeing some regression with Higgins, but to have him as your wide receiver 3 on your roster is absolutely phenomenal. To have Olave as your wide receiver 5, you're in a great spot. We can contend with David Njoku. I'm going to give you the most boring advice ever. And this is something that I know you've probably heard me say before, and obviously not telling you much here. But I would personally prefer going through and selling that 307 and 412 to get a future 3rd and 4th, like a 2026 3rd and 4th. That way, in case we go into the season and all of a sudden we have an injury to David Njoku, if we really need to, we can take that 2026 3rd and 4th and we can turn around and we can sell it for a different tight end, right? We have that flexibility when we have that extra ammunition. Outside of that, making big deals to go through and swing a Mahomes trade, a Herbert trade, a Derrick Henry trade, I don't particularly know what it would accomplish. Yeah, these are geriatric old running backs, but what roster would they have more value on than yours? I would make an argument that you are clearly the contending team in this league. You are the team who just won. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 assets that if you wanted to pivot to a rebuild, yeah, you'd probably sell because they're probably worth less next offseason than they are today. But they fit your roster extremely well for giving us production in 2025. So for me, I don't think I make any trades right now other than maybe just pushing these, the 3rd and 4th into 2026 to give us some additional ammunition in case something goes wrong. I think we let this train continue to ride, and I think we try to win it again this next year. I wish I had more for you. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. I know I hooked you up with a couple free trade questions. I honestly would not send any hypothetical trades over the next month at least. I think you're in a great spot where you don't necessarily need to do much. However, definitely use those trade questions during the season, because I'm sure that we actually will be able to make plays then, especially when we can cherry pick some those contending assets off of teams that thought they were going to be able to win this year and turns out that they can't. But I really appreciate you. And again, don't hesitate to let me know if you have anything else for me. But you're the best team in the league. You won the league last year. You're a contender this year. I know it's boring, but I don't think you really changed much, to be completely honest with you. Okay. Now, let me move this over to our next team. This is going to be from T. Barbin. Says, would love to hear your advice on what you think we should do in our rookie draft. Thank you, Mason. It is a 1 QB full PPR format. So this is going to be a 10-team start 9 1 quarterback league. So in this league, we should 100% be looking to make 2-for-1, 3-for-1 deals, trying to get the best players that we can in every trade while sacrificing depth. Here in a start 9, 10-team league, we're going to see 90 total starters. Whereas if you're playing in like a 12-team start 10-team league, you're going to see 120 total starters. So massive, massive difference here for like the wide receivers that will actually move the needle. So typically in a league like this, we're wanting to sell wide receiver depth, especially where we are sitting here at the very top of this league analyzer when it comes to value. But let me hook you up with a couple free trade questions, just in case there's anything else that you have additional that you want to send my way from this. And looking at this 100%, I can already see some moves that we were wanting to make. Now, first things first, we have an incredible team here. We have the top 2 running backs in Dynasty with Gibbs and Bijan. We have 3 wide receiver ones in Dynasty with Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Nico. We have another receiver with a ton of upside with Rashee Rice. We have DJ Moore as well. We have Trey McBride. Insane team. Now, again, if we map out the players that will actually move the needle and can actually make a difference for us, we can only start 9 total guys. So we start 1 quarterback, 1 tight end. We're starting a total of 7 running backs, receivers. We have Gibbs, Bijan, Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Nico, Rice, DJ Moore. These guys like Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Jalen Warren, Josh Downs, they're depth pieces on our bench at the moment, and that's not even to include our 2025 first rounder. So what I would be looking to do on a build like this is if I can take some of these wide receiver depth pieces, if I can take somebody like Josh Downs, or maybe you like Josh Downs, right? And what would maybe actually be a little easier for us is to take a wide receiver depth piece like Rice or DJ Moore and send it with our quarterback to go pay up and get to a true elite level quarterback. That is what I would honestly be wanting to do. Now we can pull this up and we can try to get a sense of what quarterbacks we could possibly get to. Let me just set this to the 1 quarterback values. We're going to be giving up, say, the combo of Drake May and, say, Rashee Rice. And the reason we're choosing Rice over a wide receiver like DJ Moore is just realistically, when we're looking at DJ Moore, this is going to be an asset that only contending teams can trade for. Looking at our roster, while yes, we are in an extremely strong contending position, that's not going to be the case with everybody, right? We go down here. This team is Xavier Legette as their wide receiver 1. Quentin Johnston is their wide receiver 2. They've cupped. This team has no business in trying to contend this season. So for us to approach them trying to sell them DJ Moore, we're not going to be getting any interest, right? However, an asset like Rashee Rice, we're actually going to be a spot in which we can generate a decent amount of interest because a rebuilding roster can trade for Rice because he is young enough and a contending team can trade for him as well. So one thing that I think would be interesting is just going and trying to trade straight up for those true elite level quarterbacks such as Jaden Daniels here. Looking at this deal, it says that we slightly lose. To be completely honest with you, I'm fine, quote unquote, slightly losing with this, because if we were able to trade, say, Rice and May to go pivot up to Daniels, you're in a situation in which you have cornerstone assets to win with in the short term of Daniels, Gibbs, Bijan, Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Nico, DJ Moore, Trey McBride. All of those assets you can comfortably project production from for years, while at the same time giving you by far and away the strongest team this season. That's not even to mention that we still have the depth on our roster of Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Warren, Josh Downs, 2025 first, 2025 second. And honestly, frankly, doesn't matter if it's going to be Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Any of these quarterbacks I'd be fine making this move for. I would definitely want a quarterback that's going to give you the rushing upside, particularly in a one quarterback format. I want the guy that really can break fantasy football. To go through and look at teams that would be most likely to make this trade with you. This roster here that's in the second spot where they have Lamar, Baker. I don't know how likely they are just because they already have such a strong wide receiver room. But again, this Jaden Daniels roster, I think that you could possibly make that swing with them. This team here that has Josh Allen, I think you could possibly make the swing for them as well, because Rice could arguably be their wide receiver one. So if we were to send them Rice and Drake May, one other thing that you could do, right, is if you're getting back the Josh Allen level player, is you could just tag along Trevor Lawrence with it if they're not willing to make that deal because they're going to be too concerned about their quarterback position. Because frankly, in a one quarterback format, especially in a 10-team league, right, it may not necessarily matter too much if we send Lawrence, because we're still going to have left over Josh Allen, Geno Smith, and Anthony Richardson. So we're going to be able to start quarterbacks regardless. We have the additional 2026 seconds. So just in case something does happen to that elite level quarterback that we trade for, we are going to be able to backfill it with a different trade involving one of those future 2026 picks. But I think that's all we have. I mean, I think when you have a juggernaut roster like this that's so far ahead of everybody else in this league, really the only thing that makes sense is for us to go out of our way and sell one of the wide receiver depth pieces and to just go pay up for the elite level quarterback, even if you really like Drake May, because you can afford it, right? So there's no reason not to do so, in my opinion. But I did hook you up with a couple of free trade questions. So if you have any hypothetical trades that you want to send over my way or any offers that get sent to you, I'll be super happy to take a look at them for you, my friend. Now, let's move this over to our next team. This is going to be Lost City. And let me do something real quick. I've noticed when we stream for about an hour, for whatever reason, it starts doing this. F me. I think we're actually going to call it here. I'm going to have to send this to the devs. I have no idea why it's been doing this. Like every time an hour in, let me just try to close out the website and see if it'll open back up. Did that work? That worked. Perfect. No, we good. We good. Let me move over and actually answer some of these trade questions first, though, just so we can make sure that we get to these. This one's from Meet the Flocker. Here we are sending Harrison, Nico, Reed, and we are getting back the 103, Olave, and London. Now, this is going to be a one quarterback format, so that 103 is going to be a little bit less valuable for me, as I always feel comfortable, at least this year, going through and like paying up for that 103, going up and paying for that 104. A big reason being is absolute worst case scenario. If Hunter ends up being a defensive back, Hampton gets a horrible landing spot, McMillan gets a horrible landing spot, whoever it may be, worst case scenario, you can go ahead and you can take Cam Ward, who gets the number one overall pick. But one quarterback format, that backstop isn't particularly there. So I definitely prefer Harrison over the 103 in this instance. Nico, London for me is kind of going to be a personal preference thing. I'd rather have Olave over Jaden Reed. So for me, I definitely think that this is personal preference. Superflex League, I'd probably prefer the 103, London and Olave. I don't even necessarily know if your team in this league Is this your team in this league? You better tell me this is not your team in this league. What? Okay, here. If this is your team in this league, right, where you have Josh Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan, Achane, Chase Jefferson, Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Marvin Harrison, Jaden Reed, Ricky Pearsall, Trey McBride. And this is all jokes aside here. Instead of focusing in on trades to make your team better, what you need to focus in on is how to make sure that your league mates are having as much fun as they possibly can so they don't leave the league. You need to figure out how you can get them to keep on paying their league dues year in and year out. Because if I was in a dynasty league where there was a team with Josh Allen, let's just go, the QB1, the running back 1, the running back 2, the running back 4, the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 12. The 6th wide receiver on their team is a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, and Trey McBride. I wouldn't be having any fun. I wouldn't want to pay my league dues. I'd want to get out of that league, to be completely honest with you. So this trade is your personal preference. You clearly are 10,000 times better at Dynasty than I am, at least working your league mates. You do you here, my friend. And again, I want to reiterate, I think your number one job is make sure your league mates are having fun and they're not going to jump ship, because if they jump ship, that's the only way you're not winning the league pot every year. Habibi says your trade calc says I lose, but look too good to say no. If this is a super flex league, you lose big time. Let me just make sure that we're on the same page here. Hopefully the trade calculator doesn't just say you lose. Hopefully the trade calculator says that you're getting robbed here. Maybe the trade wasn't inserted correctly. Well, let's go through and let's say hypothetically this trade is correct. Where we send Burrow, get back Richardson, Kraft, and a couple seconds. We'll even call them early seconds. Yeah, hopefully it says you're getting robbed, because for the love of God, do not take this deal. Maybe we can talk about if the rookie picks are wrong, what they would need to be to make this actually a fair trade. Like if this was the 106 and the 107, can you entertain it? I don't even know if you can entertain this. Yeah, you still lose this even if the picks are like 2 mid first. I think they would have to be up at like 104, 103 for you to, maybe 102, 103 for you even to consider it. Yeah, I think you'd have to be up 102, 103 for you to consider this. If they're 2 mid seconds, then you're not interested at all. Liam says, do the flock rankings have different rankings for each creator if you buy the membership? I've seen on domain streams their rankings are different. Yeah, so if you wanted to see the exact rankings, if you're a free member on flockfantasy.com, you'll see the average expert. But if you are a paid member, you can just hit the sort by anytime you want, and then you can click whoever's rankings you want to see, right? And then if you actually click like the individual's creators rankings, you can see that I have like my tiers up here, right? So you can see this is my QB1 tier, QB2 tier, QB3 tier, QB4 tier, and all the way down the line. But that is behind a paywall. But if you're a free member, you should be able to see as well just the average expert for free. Let's move this over. Code name Kid Next Door. Always happy to see you, says. Should I trade these picks for the 101 plus who? Yeah, this is going to be an easy deal for me. Because if we look at this, especially if this is a one quarterback format, give me the 102 versus JSN. 102, you're looking at a first round drafted running back like Hampton. 102 JSN, I think, is about equivalent in a one quarterback format. I'd probably rather have the 102 just slightly, if I'm going to be honest with you. 103 versus Ladd McConkey. Very easily give me Ladd McConkey, and very, very, very easily give me the 101 over the 102. I mean, you look at it, you upgrade from the 102 to the 101. 103 to JSN. Superflex League, where worst case scenario, it's Ward. Maybe I prefer the 103, but they're neck and neck. One quarterback format, I definitely prefer JSN. I definitely prefer Ladd McConkey over the 104. So, yeah, a great deal. I would absolutely love that trade, my friend. Now, Pac-Man coming through with the trade question. Here we're sending the 101 and a third for the 102 and the 106. Interesting. The third's not going to make a difference here, right? So I think here's the argument you can make for the 102 and the 106. If you believe Travis Hunter is going to play wide receiver and Travis Hunter's the 102, if Hunter's a full-time wide receiver, the 102 versus 101 may not be the biggest difference ever. We're getting the 106 may be enough value. Now, if you think that you can't take Hunter 102, and in that scenario, you're getting Hampton, we can go ahead and we can map this out. So your opponent gets Genty. They get a third. We're getting back the 102, 106. Saying that we slightly win this deal, which again, it's probably the side I'm leaning with, especially going to be in a super flex league where that 106, you're probably looking at a rookie like Henderson. So worst case scenario, this is like Hampton and Henderson. Best case scenario, this is like Travis Hunter and Henderson, or Judkins or Ward or McMillan, whoever you think it may be. McMillan would have to get a horrible landing spot, but still, I think it's enough value unless you are all in on Genty, of course. Now let's move this over to Mr. December. This is Jefferson versus the 101 in a couple seconds. Let's look at the team here. So it's a roster in which you can make an argument we should pivot to a rebuild. But for me, to sell off Jefferson here, I don't think it's enough value. I think I'd rather have Jefferson. If we could get back, say, the 101 and like the 109 in a mid-second, I think that could be interesting. But if it's just Jefferson versus the 101 in a couple seconds, I'm going to stick with Jettis. Okay, let me refresh this real quick. Okay, and Tandy, just in case you see this, please make sure you check your messages on the site. I'm waiting for your sleeper ID. But let's go ahead and let's move back into some of these team reviews. This one's coming out from Lost City. It says, hello from Australia. This team was the champion in 2023 and lost in the semifinals to the eventual winner in 2024. The league is reasonably active during the year and more than 20 trades alone in last year's rookie draft year. That's more than reasonably active, my guy. That's a great league. Keen to not rebuild, but want to keep it competitive and challenge it this season. So team names, nothing sus. We are right in the middle of the league analyzer. And for a league to be going on for this long and for us to see 20 trades go down in a single rookie draft, I will say it looks like everybody has a great sense of what they are doing here. The reason being is you don't have an extremely strong juggernaut team in this league. You don't have just an absolute crap 2 to 3 teams at the very bottom that have no shot to contend, right? It is very much a flat top 3 teams here, 4 teams, group of 4 teams. So this almost looks like a league that came out of a startup draft. So you're in a really good spot when it comes to the balancing competitiveness of this league. And I think you're in a tough spot with your particular roster. The reason being is this is going to be a 12-team start 11 tight end premium superflex format. So depth is actually going to matter a lot here. We go through and we look at this. We have 2 starters. We can start Kyler and Russ. Are we excited to start Russ? No. 2 starters at quarterback, 2 starters at running back with Gibbs and Kamara. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 receivers. So we're at 9. And then maybe we have 1 tight end. So we're at 10 starters. So we need an additional starter to roll into week 1 before injuries, before bye weeks, before yada, yada, yada. The additional challenge that you're going to have here is, while I know you were saying that you want to lean competitive, you don't want to rebuild, I would say you have to contend with this team. I would say rebuilding is not even going to be an option, specifically because we traded away our 2026 first. So when we don't have our 2026 first, you don't have the outside incentive of, oh, okay, well, if everything goes wrong, we'll just go ahead and we will kind of hit the soft rebuilds. We'll get the 101 in 2026, and we'll put ourselves in a situation in which we can really look to contend next season. No. You have no incentive whatsoever to be losing games. You're not going to get a higher rookie pick. You really need to go ahead and you really need to try to push to win right now. Now, with that being said, a quarterback, we could use a better quarterback too. Like Russell Wilson as our quarterback 3, I think it's going to be in a completely fine spot, especially when we have Jameis, right? So we should have a quarterback for the Giants unless they take Sanders at the beginning of the first, or maybe Jackson Dart falls at the beginning of the second, or maybe they take Milroe. Regardless, unless they take a rookie in the draft, which at this point looks like it's a far from guarantee, we're going to be fine at quarterback. Going ahead and looking at what we have at running back, we have Gibbs and Kamara. We have Bigsby, Spears, so we have some running back depth. But again, when we combine this with our lack of depth at quarterback, where our combo of like Russ and Winston as our quarterback 2 should really be our quarterback 3, and I feel like Bigsby, who's our running back 3, should really be like our running back 4. I feel like we're missing a depth piece there. Going over to receiver, we are just fine to contend with this wide receiver. And we have 5 guys. You make an argument that none of these players should see their value increase naturally over the next 12 months. I think you are kind of writing out the production with every one of these assets as contending pieces for the moment, but it's a completely fine situation to be in. And then going ahead and looking at what we have a tight end, we have Kincaid, Likely, Cade Otton. Super excited about it? No. Can we get away with it? Yes. So here's what I think you have to do with this team. I think in a start 11 format where we don't have a future first, where we are forced to go ahead and contend this season, I think we need to tier down from Jahmyr Gibbs where we're looking for depth and we don't particularly have it. So I think if we can tier down from Gibbs, pick up an additional quarterback 2, while at the same time actually get some running back depth in, it may not be the worst idea in the world. Now the issue is it's going to be a start 11, 12 team league. So we're going to have to find somebody that can afford to give up that kind of depth. So looking at first things first, a roster that has 4 starting quarterbacks on it as is, maybe a team like this where they are sitting with Love, Purdy, Stafford, Derek Carr. This is a team where you could see them talking themselves into being able to give up one of these quarterbacks. So maybe we can down tier from like Gibbs to pick up Purdy, an additional running back here. I think that could be an interesting move. Now, again, let's go ahead and let's pull up this trade calc. Clearly trading Gibbs straight up for Purdy, not even going to be remotely close. Gonna need some extra value on top of that. The question is Breece enough? Because we're not going to be able to get to Bijan, but if you're able to get to Breece, and then at that point, we can essentially say, okay, well, we have a depth running back piece and the additional starting quarterback in that start 11 format where this does slide Winston / Jameis to our QB3 slots. It puts us in a little bit of a more comfortable position because say we go into the season with this team and Kyler gets hurt, you're done. You have no shot. Where here, we make this down tier, we go into the season, Kyler gets hurt. Am I going to sit here and act like, oh, we're just fine, we're still going to be one of the stronger teams in the league? No, but you at least have a chance. I would try to squeeze out a little bit more from this team if possible. An asset that could actually make a difference here, going to be in a start 11 format for us, would maybe be a Najee Harris type. Where again, I think in some specific formats, like if you're playing in a 10-team start 10 league, I don't necessarily know if Najee's moved the needle for you, but start 11, 12-teamer, I definitely think Najee could be someone we're starting almost every single week this upcoming season. And again, we don't have our 2026 first, so we are kind of pot committed at this point to be that contending team. I think this is the type of move that we'd be looking to make. Let me see if there are any other rosters that have 4 quarterbacks that we can potentially make this down tier with. Like here's this team where they have Burrow, May, Lawrence, Darnold. But an issue that you're going to have here is for us to down tier from like Gibbs to Lawrence, what are we asking added on? Ramondre, like this team's clearly a rebuilder and they don't have enough juice to really move anything for us one way or another. And if we're trading away Gibbs, we probably need to be trading away Gibbs to a contending team. A rebuilding roster is not going to be looking at a player like that. So really, for that kind of trade, I think maybe the most likely outcome is trading with this roster here. One thing that we could look to do is put ourselves in a situation in which we can draft Cam Ward. I'm trying to figure out who has those rookie picks. This team here is sitting with like the 104. So one possibility that you could do is trying to send Gibbs. And again, it would just come down to, is this team willing to make this move? For the 104 and like Jonathan Taylor. And then we could turn around and potentially try to take Cam Ward to the 104, have Ward in there as our quarterback too, pick up that running back starter. Maybe we can get a little depth piece added on here. The trade calculator says that we can. Maybe if we're able to get like a James Conner added on, given the depth requirement in this league and the fact that we are looking to contend, that could be something as well. But those teams at the bottom again are having a rebuild, so that's not interesting. I would keep wide receiver the same. Again, I think the big thing that I'm looking to do is try to tier down from Gibbs, pick up a couple extra running back starters as well as that additional quarterback. And then if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to send your 308, 408 to get a deal done, completely fine doing so. Also completely fine selling like the 208 and picking up a 2026 second and a third. Sending the 308, trying to pick up a 2026 third and fourth, sending the 408, trying to pick up a 2026 fourth. That way we just continue to stack up those future picks in case we get an injury during the season to a quarterback like, say, Purdy, if we traded for Purdy, and then all of a sudden we need to flip around and sell a 2026 second to a rebuilding team for a spot start at quarterback. I think that could give us a little more flexibility, but I think that's all I got for you. And again, I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out, my guy. Now, let's move this over to our next question. This one's going to be from Pac-Man here. And says, I actually won this league in 2023. I fear my team value is slipping. Thinking I need to try and trade up with my picks for better picks or players. Please advice and thanks again. Thank you, my guy. This is going to be a little bit of a tougher spot because it is a well-balanced league. Superflex, 12 teams, start 10, PPR, half point tied in premium format. So it's not as easy as saying, oh, okay, yeah, well, we know that we can just go make a play for depth, or oh, we can sacrifice depth to go get the top end stud. No, you need to have a well-balanced approach in this league in particular. And if we are going to be looking at what we have specifically with the distribution of power, it's going to be a tough spot to be in. You have a juggernaut build at the very, very top, Marvin Harry, where they're sitting with Puka, Neighbors, Harrison, Ayuk, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams. Just their quarterback room of Daniels, Burrow, Caleb has more trade value alone than the bottom teams in the league combined. Like this team here at the very bottom, their entire they trade their entire roster and all their picks for Burrow, Caleb, Daniels. They're not getting it done. So it will be difficult to compete with that team at the very top. But going through, looking at where we stand on this, we do have a couple picks, which gives us a lot of flexibility to make moves, right? I will say, based off the situation that we are at with our team, I actually kind of like the picks that we do have. Quarterback, we are sitting with Purdy, Geno, Daniel Jones. Not a strong quarterback room by any stretch of the imagination, right? I'd be very happy with Brock Purdy as my quarterback 2. I'd be very happy with Geno as my quarterback 3. I'd be very happy with Daniel Jones, my quarterback 4. But to have them as QB1, QB2, QB3, I feel like we're probably going to be getting beat out at every single one of those spots in comparison to the average contending roster in this league. Going over to running back, we have Kyron, Walker, Najee. So we can contend with this running back room, right? Am I ecstatic about it? Probably not, but I think we're going to be just fine. I think we can get it done. Going over to wide receiver, we are sitting with St. Brown, Addison, Tyreek, Jaden Reed. Going to be a start 10, 12 teamers, so it's not going to be super, super important to have a ton of depth at wide receiver. We have Myers, and tight end we have absolutely nothing with Jonnu, Schultz, Michael Mayer. But if we look at these rookie picks, I think that this can actually put us in a very comfortable position to actually make plays. Because let's go over and let's look at what we have with the Superflex rookie ranks. So the 109, if you end up getting Mika Egbuka, if you end up getting Caleb Johnson, either player added onto your roster should almost immediately have the upside to be a player that we can get in the starting lineup. And even if we whiff on those strong running backs and wide receivers, right outside this range as well, you're looking at the Tyler Warren, Loveland, Shedeur Sanders range. So assuming Shedeur Sanders ends up getting the NFL draft capital, going like 110, 109, 111, Loveland, Warren, tight end premium format, you can put those guys in the flex, throw Shedeur Sanders in here at quarterback, roll into the season in a spot in which quarterback has a lot more upside, tight end is solved. Not only is it solved, but at the same time, you actually have room for us to throw one of those tight ends into the flex, and running back a wide receiver we can get by with. I actually think that these late first round picks with where we currently are situated have the upside to move the needle for us at the positions we almost need it the most. And you can just see this with the league analyzer ranking our quarterback room 10th in this league, tight end room 10th in this league, but wide receiver and running back kind of in the middle of the road. Now, another possibility, if you wanted to contend this season, is you could actually go through and you can take some of these younger assets that maybe rebuilding rosters would be okay and accepting, such as Jordan Addison and Jaden Reed, and try to package them with some of these second rounders that we have, whether that's the 208, 209, 211, and see if we can move up to a contending piece that's going to be able to help us move the needle right now. So going through and looking at maybe this team at the very bottom, that's Krispy Kreme. They are, in my opinion, going to be a rebuilding team, right? Their wide receiver 1's Metcalf, wide receiver 2's Godwin, Pearsall, and wide receiver 4's Leggett. Their quarterback 2's Stafford. I don't necessarily see this team having enough value to really move the needle. If you wanted to go out there and see if we can send them like Jaden Reed, as well as a late second to get up to Metcalf, I think that could be an interesting move if that team wanted to rebuild. I think they probably should consider that trade, to be honest. So like late second, Jaden Reed versus DK Metcalf. Is there a way we can get up there? It's saying that we win, so maybe we need to add on an additional pick to this, add on that third. But if we can convince that team to be a rebuilder, this is possibly a way that we can just go ahead and not only solve quarterback, tight end with these rookie picks right here. And that's assuming worst case scenario. That's assuming that we don't get one of those great prospects at either wide receiver or running back falling to us. And then we can almost use these second rounders and third rounders as leverage to trade up with some of these rebuilding, or not rebuilding assets, but younger assets to get to a DK Metcalf that can maybe move the needle a little bit more. I think you are in a situation in which you can have future value while at the same time trying to contend with this team in that instance. looking at what else we could do with this roster, if you wanted to try to move up from like the 109, 110, 111, which I do think makes a lot of sense for teams to try to move out of this range depending on their build. You could try packaging together like the 209 with the 109, seeing if we can get up to the 107. But again, I think it's going to be much easier said than done this year, where I've seen a lot of people trying to get up into that mid first round range. I don't necessarily know if a lot of people want to be in the late first, because you are going to be looking at those tight ends slash maybe a not super exciting quarterback like Sanders. Whereas for your team, I think that those prospects actually make some sense for you to take in the rookie draft. So I don't necessarily know if those would be guys I'd be actively trying to avoid. But I think that's all I got for you here, my guy. Again, I think that you're in a very comfortable spot because those rookie picks give you a lot of flexibility, because some of those best players available may actually end up being positions that you could use. Now, I think that's all I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. I need to text Avery from Dynasty Domain and make sure that he knows that we should be going to New York tomorrow and not today, and make sure he didn't get the wrong flights, because I just checked the Airbnb, and yeah, our Airbnb check-ins tomorrow. So maybe, just maybe, he got himself a different place. So I need to reach out and make sure that they know. But I appreciate you guys. And I do want to remind you, real quick, just in case you didn't see it early in the live stream, this is one of many tools that we are going to be having on the site that I think should be able to help you all out a ton. Is we've actually added a bunch of advanced analytics to the player cards where you're able to go through and you're able to see things like carries inside the 5-yard line, juke rate, snap percentages. You're able to see this from their career. You can check out any game logs you want. Going over to wide receivers, you can go look at yards per route run. You can look at the amount of routes that they're running. You can look at their target share. Check out a bunch of different things that we're going to have on the site. And again, it's just the very beginning. I can't wait to show y'all what we have coming very, very soon. But Jeep guys, see you in the chat. Really appreciate you, my guy. And yeah, I'm going to get back to daily streams relatively soon. But much love, ladies and gentlemen. I will hopefully see you out with a live stream this weekend when I'm with the FSC guys and the Domain guys.